Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the worst books that I read in 2023. I have 8 books that were my least favorite books of the year. Let's just get into it. It's also like, it was a really nice day, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna film today, and then the clouds rolled in like by the time I got ready to film. So it's like incredibly dark, and I'm so sorry. This lighting is so weird. So honestly, in no particular order, I don't think that I necessarily have like a worst book of the year, you know? Maybe if I really thought about it. Really, this is in the order that I read them in, actually, so let's just go off that. So the first book of the year that I read that I hated, that's a weird way to put that, was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I know that this is a very popular romance. Everyone seems to love this book, and I can see the appeal, but it just did not work for me. In my opinion, no romance should be 482 pages. In what world is that appropriate? In what world is that acceptable? None. I'll tell you, none. Almost a 500-page romance? Like with almost no other, you know, subgenre or anything, not even like romantasy, nothing like that, just straight up like a 500, almost a tome of a romance. That's absurd to me. This book was way too long. It was so slow. Honestly, this whole premise, right, is like enemies to lovers. Where were they enemies? Where were they enemies? They like kind of disliked each other, maybe a little side eye here or there. No, if you're gonna do enemies to lovers, I want to be able to feel the hatred they have for each other through the pages. I want to like in my soul be like, these people fucking hate each other. So then when they get together, it's like, oh shit, you know? It's like you kind of have this revelation of like, wait, I think I hate you so much because I'm like crazy in love with you. Like, that's hot. Like, let's do that, right? So that's how I felt with this. It was like he was clearly obsessed with her the whole time. Like, if a man treated me that way, I'd be like, you're obsessed with me. I don't know how she was so naive to the way that the whole story just, it was not good. I did not see it. It's a very popular book, so I am definitely in the minority. Like, if you were planning on reading it and you're hearing me say these things and you're like, oh, maybe not, take it with a grain of salt because it's a very popular book. I just did not like it whatsoever. Then I have a kind of a surprising one, which is Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood. This is the first Ali Hazelwood that I have not really absolutely loved. I mean, I've given her some like 3 stars, but never like, I think I gave this like 1.5, 2. Like, that's really wild for me because normally I really do like her stuff typically. This is another one where it was supposed to be enemies to lovers, and yet this is a novella, and in the first page, no, so not a spoiler, in the first page it shows the characters getting together, and then it's like, oh, a week ago or whatever, I forget how long it jumped back. If I'm supposed to believe in this enemies to lovers kind of trope, just like I said with the Spanish Love Deception, I want them to be like at each other's throats. So I don't want to see, and this one they did have more of that energy, but I don't want to first pick up a book and then literally within the first page it's like, oh yeah, just a reminder, they do get together and this is them like making out and stuff. Like, it's literally showing you what's going to happen at the end. I did not like that at all. It's like, it's enemies to lovers trope. We know they're eventually going to become lovers. There's no romance book where they end still absolutely fucking hating each other. We didn't need to see this, oh, this is what's gonna happen. We know it's enemies to lovers. It just ruined that angst for me. Like, I love a good enemies to lovers angst, you know? And it just kind of ruined it. I get that it works in some genres, like, you know, like a sci-fi, it really works. Or like, even like a horror, like, oh, I'm in this situation, like, you know, here's how I ended up here. That whole trope kind of thing works, but with a romance, it's like, that's the whole point of the book though, is seeing that relationship build up. It didn't work for me, that whole like jump back thing. It didn't work for me. Then very surprisingly, this last year I did catch up in the Bromance Book Club series, which I adore. I love the Bromance Book Club books. One of them, Crazy Stupid Bromance, ended up being one of my worst rated books of the year. I gave this 2 stars. This follows 2 characters, what were their names? Noah and Alexis. And I loved them in the previous books. I really did. And I was super excited to see their story and their love kind of blossom. But this one just didn't. It took a really strange turn. There was this whole issue that Alexis had with her, you know, estranged dad, and he like needs a kidney, and you know, there's all this like family drama on her side, And it's not that I don't appreciate romance that can't also discuss things like that, because I actually usually prefer romance that is a little more leaning towards literary fiction or has a little bit more depth to it, usually. And so it's not that I don't like harsh or, you know, more difficult topics in my romance, but this felt random and it felt out of place in the series. Like, if you have a pretty fluffy, kind of fun romance series and then you just have one that's randomly very serious and discusses all these issues that have nothing to do with the relationship, it felt off for the series. So I didn't really appreciate that, and I didn't like it. It didn't flow with the rest of the books. And then there's this whole other separate plot too, involving like military and like this being a spy and all this shit. And so then that's this whole other side character or side plot that is also distracting from, you know, their story building, has really ultimately kind of nothing to do with it at all and never circles back. And it's like it's so unrealistic and it's so wild and it's so cheesy and like corny and not a good way, in my personal opinion, that it just felt so random in this series. I don't know, I was really disappointed by this one, and I feel like every other book in the series follows kind of, I don't want to say the same plot, but it follows like a couple, and it shows that couple, you know, working through things or trying to get together or stay together or what have you. But this one just threw in so many opposite random things that I was just like, but where is the focus on the actual romance? So I was really missing those elements with this, which sucked, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Then I have The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Me and Paul, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Me and Paul, we just don't click, you know? Cabin at the End of the World for me felt like the weirdest book ever, but not in a cool way. It felt very odd, like all over the place, very convoluted. Nothing really made sense, but not in like a cool, mysterious kind of speculative fiction type of way. It was more just seemed like the book was all over the place. It seemed very, you know, it wasn't cohesive in any sense of the word at all, and it just was so odd. I much preferred the movie, which I almost never say. I will say it again once in this video though, but I almost preferred the movie, and the movie even was one of my, I think I watched like 160 movies last year. I think that The Cabin at the End of the World, or Knock at the Cabin, whatever they ended up naming the movie, I don't know why they changed it, but whatever they ended up naming the movie, I think it was like in my bottom 10, bottom 15 or something. So I wasn't a fan of the movie either, to be honest, but I do think I enjoyed it more than the book, just because I enjoyed the ending a little bit more. The ending in the book was very like, wait, what the fuck? And at least in the movie, we did have a little bit more, things were a little bit more wrapped up. I don't know. I personally didn't enjoy it. To be honest, this isn't like a fan favorite. Like, I would say majority of people don't really enjoy this book. The average rating on Goodreads is a 3.33, and that's pretty fucking low for a book that popular and an author that popular. So clearly, like, not a book that most people enjoy, but I thought I would like it, so I was kind of disappointed. But like I've said, me and Paul Tremblay, like, I also read The Pallbearers Club this year, and I gave that one 3 stars, so that's not in this video at all. But I've tried to read Survivor Song and DNF'd it, and then I had, you know, Cabin at the End of the World, that was 2 stars, and then even Pallbearers Club is only 3 stars, so clearly we just, like, don't jive well together. I am gonna give, what's that new one he has coming out? Horror movie. I'm such a movie buff, it's not even funny. If you think I like books, get me talking about movies, and you'll be like, whoa, fucking chill. It's about, like, these filmmakers and stuff, and so if there is a book by him that I meant to enjoy, it would be this one. So if I don't jive with this one, then that's it for me and Paul. Okay, that's it, we're done. Then I have Office Hours. Now this one is just a random book that I picked up on Stuff Your Kindle Day. I have really been trying to take advantage of Stuff Your Kindle Day, but I stay just selecting the most random things. The most random. If it even sounds close to something that I would like, add. Why not? It's free. So I'm been stuffing my Kindle lately. Why does that sound dirty? Regardless. And this one I gave 1.5 stars. Now, the writing style for this, the writing was actually good. I was like, okay, I might, you know, try to pay attention to what else they come out with in the future, because the writing was actually decent, but the premise was just foul to me. Like, ultimately her professor blackmails her into sleeping with him, but like, it wasn't even like in like a consensual kind of hot way. She was like, oh, I have to do this, like all the, you know what I mean? So it wasn't even, she was like, oh yeah, like, you know, you don't have to blackmail me, you know, all those like sexy stuff. She was like, no, like I'm literally getting blackmailed. I have to do this. Like it was sad. It was like sad to read. So I was like, okay, this is like seems like borderline unconsensual. So this is like really awkward. But the writing was actually good. Like the writing style, the pace, the descriptions, like it was good writing, but just the premise overall, I was like, this is kind of foul. And I know some people are into that, so I know it's like a me problem. Like I know a lot of people will probably like this, but it just felt very uncomfortable. So not for me. Then I have what I think would be the worst book of the year, and that is Bridget Jones's Diary. I know you have so many questions. I do as well. I read this because I did the Pop Sugar Challenge again last year. I did it in 2022 and I did it last year. I will never do it again. Maybe. Never say never, but not for a long time will I do that again. And one of the prompts on there was to read a book that was published the year you were born. Well, I don't know what happened the year I was born, but writers were not giving anything. The options of the main popular ones were like Bridget Jones's Diary, A Game of Thrones, but I was already reading that for Read the Longest Book on Your TBR. Fight Club, I think. I think those are like the main three that I kept seeing. I'm not even kidding. Infinite Jest, I think was on there. But mainly like books maybe, yeah, I had heard of here and there, but I had no interest in reading. And I felt like something really light at the time, so I decided to pick up Bridget Jones's Diary because everyone always talks about the movie, which I had never seen. Everyone always talks about, you know, how great it is, how funny it is. So I was like, you know what? Let's go to the source material, babes. Let's read this book and see if it's good, right? What the fuck was this book? 1 star, if not less than 1 star. This was the weirdest book I've ever read in my life. Bridget is the most annoying character I've ever read from. She's so self-deprecating and honestly not even in a funny way. Like sometimes I don't mind it when characters are a little self-deprecating in like a cheeky funny way, you know, haha. She pretty much is like setting out on this journey to lose weight and get her shit together and stop smoking cigarettes and doing all these things, right? But you have to think like this was written in the 90s. So it's just like sad. There's a lot that I think would probably like trigger people with eating disorders in this book. Her, you know, focus so much on like appearances is something that was kind of like sad to see. And I understand like it definitely is a product of its time, but we've come so far, and so, you know, reading it 30 years later, it's kind of sad. It's like, you know, it's sad to think that women really felt this way and, you know, felt validated, you know, put so much of their value onto what men said about them, like appearance-wise and stuff like that. And it was just a mess of a book. Bridget was a mess of a character. Did not appreciate her, like her, and learn from her, or, you know, see the point in the piece of work at all. And I didn't think it was entertaining or anything. It was just very, very bad. So I did give that 1 star. I think I even possibly gave it less on Storygraph. And I hated it, which I don't say about books a lot. I usually try to give them grace. You know, people pour their heart and their soul into books, and I usually try to, even books I don't like, I try to see why people would like it, and I usually can. But with this one, I sadly, very, very sadly, cannot see the appeal from any direction. Fun fact though, I did go on to watch the movie and I loved the movie. Like absolutely loved the movie. Then I have Bright Lights Big Christmas by Mary Kay Andrews. Now this one I figured would be kind of hit or miss. I feel like Mary Kay Andrews typically writes books for a very specific demographic. Like I would say more middle-aged white women. And that's just like the demographic. I don't know, don't yell at me. That's the demographic. And so I was very surprised when last year I picked up The Santa Suit and really enjoyed it. You know, it was an author I never really would have picked up from before, but I had heard really great things about The Santa Suit, so I decided to give it a go, and I ended up really enjoying it. I think I gave it like 3.5, 4 stars or something, so really pleasantly surprised with that one last year. I saw she had a new Christmas one coming out, so I was like, oh, since she did it so well last time, let's try it again with, you know, Bright Lights Big Christmas. And this one was such a flop. Literally my review is womp womp womp. Like this was literally so disappointing. It's set in New York City at this family Christmas farm, you know, right in the city. And if you think of that energy, like if you imagine being there, it's just so, you know, like everyone's like the Christmas vibes in New York are different. And so just having that, working at the Christmas tree farm, you know, in the city, all that, the vibes, that wasn't encapsulated at all in the book. And so it kind of sucked because it was a Christmas book and they kept talking about, you know, the farm, or not the farm, like the lot, you know, the Christmas tree lot. and all these things, but yet the Christmas vibes, the Christmas magic, the spirit, the energy, it wasn't there. It didn't feel like a Christmas tree, you know, a Christmas book. My camera died, but I don't have time to wait for it to charge, so I'm just gonna film on my phone to wrap this up. But anyways, if you had taken the Christmas tree farm and turned it into anything else, it would have been the exact same story. So really the Christmas tree lot was the only thing about it that made it super Christmassy. The writing was really, really choppy. The characters were underdeveloped and all over the place. I didn't believe the romance. It was kind of insta-lovey, and I didn't believe it. It was there were just so many elements about this book that felt like it wasn't edited, it wasn't prepared in time, and I think it was released before it was like properly ready. They probably like rushed it just to be out before the Christmas season, but they really should have taken their time and waited even just another month or something, because I think it came out in October. It came out in September. Even if they had just taken another month or two, I think that, you know, to really edit and hone in on this story, I think it would have been perfect. There were some queer characters in here. There were 2 gay men in here, that I thought was interesting just because, like I said, the typical demographic for this story and, you know, the typical demographic for this story, enough said. And so I was really surprised by that, but unfortunately they were very stereotypical and very almost like caricatures of typical like gay men. Like one was very flamboyant, you know, that stereotype, and the other one was very like woe is me, like depressed angst stereotype. And so I just felt like there were stereotypes. Like I don't know if Mary Kay Andrews has ever met a queer person in her life, but these stereotypes, like, was it interesting to see that rep even being put in a book that would normally probably fit in with like Christian women's fiction? Yes, it was very interesting, a very interesting choice. But that rep wasn't done well. So then it's like, who was that for? Was that so she could just check a box? Or was it really for her to try to open up her demographic and allow her books to become more diverse? In my opinion, it felt like the first one because it wasn't done well. It wasn't representation that she took the time to actually care about. And that really sucked to read. So wouldn't recommend this one. Then the last book I have is We Met in December. This is a book that I picked up because I thought it was a Christmas romance, and it is not. And you would think that it is, right? Because it's literally a We Met in December. You know, it follows 2 people, one house. They like end up being, you know, flatmates and all this stuff. But the book only takes place during Christmas, the first chapter and like the last chapter. And in between that, it's a whole year of their lives spent together, kind of, you know, becoming, you know, being roommates, friends, eventually kind of lovers in a way. And so it's like, you know, the cover and the story and the synopsis and, you know, everything, the title, it makes you think it's going to be this Christmas romance. And then it's just not even close to a Christmas romance. It is really just a regular romance. They quite literally met in December, and then the book follows the year following that. So almost no part of Christmas. I think even the second chapter is already moving into the new year. So you see almost none. You see almost nothing set in actually December and, you know, Christmas vibes or anything. So I think that was where I was really disappointed, because I was reading this at the time for a Christmas vlog that didn't end up going up because this one didn't even really count. So that was really strange, and I think they mismarketed this book a lot. Even taking that out, so even if I take out, you know, that kind of misunderstanding, it still isn't a great book. It, you know, the climax, the ending happened literally within like the last chapter, and there's almost no kind of resolve to, you know, everything that happened. It's just like, oh yeah, you know, this is the peak, and then the book ends. And it just, you know, it was a rushed ending, which I hate. And I really didn't enjoy it in so many aspects, and I didn't feel a connection with the characters. I didn't feel like the characters were relatable, not just to me, but like to anybody almost. I felt like they were just very flat, one-dimensional kind of people, and they didn't feel real. So I feel like it would be hard for anyone to kind of relate or root for them. And it just, I felt like wasn't written super, super, super well. So those are the worst books that I read in 2023. Let me know what yours were, or if you've read any of these, your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.